John.
Kayleigh, if I could, welcome to the podium for the first time.
Thank you.
As well. The markets are down substantially today after the president yesterday suggested in the East Room that he might use tariffs to punish China over the coronavirus. Is there any serious consideration being given to putting new tariffs on China, or was the president just spitballing yesterday?
Look, I won't get ahead of any announcements from the president, but I will echo the president's displeasure with China. It's no secret that China mishandled this situation. Just a few examples for you. They did not share the genetic sequence until a professor in Shanghai did so on his own the very next day. China shut down his lab for, quote, rectification. They slow-walked information on human-to-human transmission alongside the World Health Organization and didn't let U.S. investigators in at a very important time. So we take displeasure with China's actions, but I certainly won't get ahead of the president with those announcements.
Is the president seriously considering forcing China to pay some sort of compensation, reparations, whatever word you want to put on it?
Again, when it comes to retaliatory measures, I will not get ahead of the president on that.
Thank you, Kayleigh, and welcome to the podium as well. The president said yesterday that he has a high degree of confidence that the coronavirus originated in a lab in Wuhan, China, and yet his own intelligence agencies say they're still investigating. So does the president have information, and has he drawn a conclusion that the intelligence community has not yet?
Look, the president's statement is consistent with the other intelligence assessments. While we continue to have very limited and dubious data from China, current assessments indicated that President Trump's statement is consistent with what some analysts believe is the epicenter of where the virus began. And I would note that intelligence statement you're referring to really made 2 points. One, that this virus originated in China. Two, that it began through contact with infected animals or was the result of an accident at a laboratory in Wuhan. So I consider that consistent with what the president said, that he's seen intelligence suggesting it could be in the Wuhan laboratory.
Yes. Seem to lean into the idea that this started in a laboratory, whereas the statement that we saw from the DNI said we're still investigating those two options that you just laid out. Is the president in any way creating mixed messaging by not saying we're still investigating?
No, let me remind everyone, intelligence is just an estimate essentially, and it's up to policymakers to decide what to do with that intelligence. In this case, the policymaker is the president of the United States, and he'll make that decision at the right time.
Is the president any close to deciding what to do about China? Has he received any recommendations of the consequences? Is he anywhere near a decision?
Look, again, I won't get ahead of the president's decision or the timing of that decision, but he takes this very seriously because the decisions of China that I referenced, slow-walking some of that information, put American lives at risk. And rest assured, this president has one priority, and that is the safety and the well-being of American lives.
Thanks so much, Kayleigh. Welcome. Since it's been more than 100 days since the press secretary stood up there, I wanted to get a better sense of what your plan is. Are you planning to do these on a daily basis at this point? And also, will you pledge never to lie to us from that podium?
I will never lie to you. You have my word on that. As to the timing of the briefings, we do plan to do them. I will announce timing of that forthcoming, but we do plan to continue these. John?
Welcome to the podium. A question for you on Project Warp Speed. Can you give us some more details? The president said ultimately he's in charge of this project, but will there be a day-to-day point person on this? What's the budget for this project, and when can the American people realistically expect that there will be a vaccine available to everybody?
Well, there is a day-to-day point person, and that's the President of the United States, President Trump. And with regard to vaccines, I would note the words of Dr. Fauci, which are these: going into a phase 1 trial within 3 months of getting the sequence is unquestionable. The world indoor record. Nothing has ever gone this fast. So what the president is doing, and under the president's leadership, we're in phase 1 faster than ever before, according to Dr. Fauci, and that should encourage the American people. Yes.
Thank you for being here. When the president says we did a spectacular job, but when Jared Kushners talks about a great success story, some Americans see it as a lack of empathy. Do you understand their reaction?
Look, Jared Kushner has, first of all, done a great job for this administration. And what I would say to that is that when he talked about a success story, he was talking about the story of this administration, which is a story of mobilization for the American people, the greatest mobilization of American industry since World War II. Of course, we grieve for every American life that has been lost, but we want the American people to be confident in the response of this administration, and that is what he was referring to. The fact that in the average year, the healthcare industry uses 25 million N95 masks, and we have delivered in this short time 75 million N95 masks, more than 3 times what the healthcare sector uses in a year. That's extraordinary. It's extraordinary that some in the media were saying that we needed 1 million ventilators, and this president we've needed far short of that so far. Not a single American has died for lack of a ventilator, and the fact that this president can look the American people in the eye and say, I am producing 100,000 ventilators this year alongside the private sector. 100,000 ventilators, that's 3 times what we produce in the average year. I'd consider that a great success on behalf of the American people.
I guess it's more about the tone than the policy itself.
We want to give the American people confidence that they have a federal government that is doing everything in our power to provide the necessary equipment to combat this invisible enemy. We grieve for the American lives. We've said that repeatedly. I will echo that today. My heart breaks for those. I pray regularly for those who are affected by the coronavirus. But we're going to give confidence to the American people that you have a federal government under President Donald Trump that's going to step up and give the greatest mobilization of the private sector since World War II.
One of the most important parts of your job, though, is to have access to the president. Can you give us some indication that since you've been named press secretary, what kind of access do you have to the president to get what he's thinking and relay it to us?
Yeah, I can tell you this. I'm around the president almost the entire day. I was just with him before I left to come out and speak with you guys. I think my staff can attest to the fact that they have a very hard time finding me because I'm normally with the president in the Oval Office. So I'm consistently with him, absorbing his thinking, and it's my mission to bring you the mindset of the president, deliver those facts so this president gets fair and accurate reporting and the American people get fair and accurate information. Yeah.
Thanks, Kayleigh. Just following up on Kristen's question, China's blocking the World Health Organization from coming in and investigating how this started. Shouldn't external investigators be allowed into Wuhan to determine, 1, how the pandemic started, and 2, maybe a way that we could expedite finding a cure for this thing?
Look, there's no secret that China stopped U.S. investigators from coming in. It was of paramount importance that we got into China in an expedited fashion, and that didn't happen. With respect to the World Health Organization, they have some questions of their own to answer. The United States, as the president has emphasized, provides about $400 million to $500 million per year to the WHO, compared to China at roughly $40 million a year. But yet the WHO appears to have a very clear China bias. I mean, you look at this timeline, and it's really damning for the WHO when you consider the fact that on December 31st, you had Taiwanese officials warning about human-to-human transmission. The WHO did not make that public. On January 9th, the WHO repeated China's claim that the virus, quote, does not transmit readily between people. That was quite apparently false. On January 14th, the WHO again repeated China's talking points about no human-to-human transmission. They praised China's leadership on the 22nd of January. On the 23rd, they said, and this is incredible, the pandemic didn't represent a public health emergency of international concern. And even on February 29th, you had the WHO saying that when the coronavirus was spreading around the world, they chose to put political correctness first by opposing life-saving travel restrictions. The travel restrictions this president put in place, the travel restrictions that Dr. Fauci praised as saving lives. And you have the World Health Organization opposing a measure that saved American lives. That's unacceptable, especially at a time when the U.S. was providing $400 to $500 million.
You mentioned Dr. Fauci a minute ago. Are we going to have any more press briefings with Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and the health experts, or is the White House kind of shifting the message to focus more on the economy and less on the public health aspect?
Well, let me back up and talk to you a little bit about how we approach disseminating information. When I talk with my colleague Alyssa and we plan out the communication strategy for this White House, along with the president and Ben as well. What we do is we say, what is the best mode for the public to receive this information at this time? And we allow the news cycle and the needs of the American people to guide us. And at the moment, what we see happening, and I hinted at this in my gaggle last week, is you have 35 states, and probably more at this point, with plans to reopen the country. Americans are looking to reopening the country. We've had Dr. Birx in several events this week. They've been Dr. Birx and Fauci out on the airwaves. They're really incredible people and have done a great service for this country. But we allow the news of the day to guide us, what the American people need to hear. And right now we're in a reopening phase, which is why you've seen the president this week with CEOs. You've seen him with small business owners, with small business employees. Today with some great heroes that have emerged from this pandemic and have done a lot of the hard work. So every day we approach this as, how can we disseminate this information? There's a need for information, which is why I'm here, supplementing the efforts of this president to get the message out. I would also note he's the most accessible president in history. Took questions twice yesterday, twice the day before. You hear from him quite often, as well as our medical experts.
So is the task force still meeting? I guess what's the role of the coronavirus task force? We still have hundreds of people a day are dying. So what role does the task force have versus the economic advisory groups?
Yeah, the task force meets regularly. I go to those meetings. I hear them. Dr. Birx, I should say, is meticulously reviewing the data in granular detail. I watch them spend sometimes the upwards of 2 hours in these task force briefings. So those are still ongoing. Rest assured, we want a safe reopening. So we are prioritizing the health of the American people, as well as looking forward to reopening this country.
Yes, thank you, Kayleigh. Back to the DNI statement from yesterday, there is a quote that I'd like you to give me a response to. It said, the intelligence community also concurs with the wide scientific consensus that the COVID-19 virus was not man-made or genetically modified. This was from the DNI statement. How do you see this statement? How do you understand this? And also there was a piece in the New York Times that said senior Trump administration officials have pushed intelligence agencies to hunt for evidence to support the theory that COVID-19 was made in a Wuhan laboratory.
I can assure you that no one is pressing the intelligence community to come to a determination. The intelligence community statement stands. It's in perfect concert with what the president said. So, I encourage the media to convey the facts to the American people, which is that we're in line as an administration and we stand by the intelligence community, and that is in complete concert with what the president said yesterday.